Hi, I'm Elena Blackwood. I found my wedding dress on my sister at her baby shower, then watched my husband pass her a velvet jewelry box under the table. My own flesh and blood stole my dream gown and apparently my marriage too, all while carrying his child. They dismantled my life piece by piece, thinking I wouldn't notice as they built their future with the fragments of mine. Will you stay silent or watch me reclaim what's mine? Stitch by heartbreaking stitch. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It was one of those perfect autumn evenings in Portland, when the air feels like possibility, and the leaves dance just for you. Bennett was downstairs in his home office, talking intensely on the phone about some crisis at Eternal Vows, the bridal empire he'd built from nothing but ambition, and his grandmother's sewing machine. I was curled up in our master suite, sketching designs for my own small collection of evening wear, the creative outlet that kept me sane while my husband conquered the wedding industry. The kind of evening that should have ended with wine on the porch and early dreams. Instead, it ended with my world splintering like fine crystal on marble. Bennett's tablet chimed with an incoming email. It sat on the nightstand where he'd left it, screen lighting up. I didn't mean to look. Truly, I didn't. But the notification preview caught my eye before I could look away. Perfect fit. Can't wait to see your face at the shower. Love you always, Fiona. Fiona. My younger sister. My throat tightened. The attachment thumbnail showed a flash of ivory fabric that looked eerily familiar. My fingers moved without permission from my brain, picking up the tablet. Bennett's password was still our wedding date. 5 years together, and he'd never changed it. I almost laughed at the irony. The screen unlocked and I opened the email. The ivory fabric I'd glimpsed was my wedding dress. Not a similar design, not an inspiration, MY dress. The one Bennett had designed especially for me, the one-of-a-kind creation he'd called his masterpiece, the dress that had launched his bridal collection and been the cornerstone of Eternal Vows' signature line. There stood Fiona, her pregnant belly curved beneath the bodice that had been tailored for my slimmer frame. Someone had let out the seams, adjusted the drape to accommodate her pregnancy. The alterations were perfect, professional. Done in Bennett's studio, no doubt. I stared at the image for what felt like hours, my breath shallow and strange in my chest. Fiona was wearing my wedding dress to her baby shower. The dress Bennett had promised would never be replicated, never be worn by anyone else, never be anything but uniquely mine. But there was something more unsettling than the dress. It was her expression. Not the embarrassment of someone wearing a borrowed item, but the confidence of ownership. Her hands cradled her belly with a reverence that made my skin crawl with suspicion. I scrolled down. More photos, more emails, a whole thread I'd never seen. Bennett and Fiona, Fiona and Bennett. Messages going back nearly a year. Lunch dates when he claimed to be meeting fabric suppliers. Late nights at the studio when he told me he was finalizing the spring collection. I kept scrolling until I found it. The message that turned suspicion into certainty. The baby kicked today. I think he knows his daddy's voice already. The tablet slipped from my fingers onto the plush carpet. No dramatic crash, no shattering screen. Just a soft thud that didn't match the explosion happening inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I picked up the tablet and placed it exactly as I'd found it. Then I walked to the bathroom on legs that should have been trembling but weren't. I stared at my reflection, at the woman who'd believed every late night was about building their future, every business trip necessary for their shared dreams. It's strange how betrayal doesn't hit like a thunderbolt. It seeps in like fog, clouding everything you thought was clear. I splashed cold water on my face, the shock of it nothing compared to what I'd just discovered. Downstairs, Bennett was still on his call, his voice rising and falling with the practiced charm that had won over fashion editors and investors alike. I listened from the top of the stairs, hearing him as if for the first time. How had I never noticed the hollow space behind his words? My phone was still on the bedside table. I picked it up and texted Vera, my college roommate, my confidant, the woman who'd warned me about Bennett's wandering attention years ago. Are you awake? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. For you? Always. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. How do you compress this kind of betrayal into a text message? I need to talk. It's about Bennett and Fiona. I'll be there in 30. Don't do anything until I arrive. I didn't. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd chosen together at some overpriced designer showroom, where Bennett had charmed the saleswoman with stories of how he designed wedding dresses that made brides feel like queens. I traced the intricate stitching on the duvet cover, thinking about seams and secrets and how easily both could come undone. Bennett's call ended. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the familiar rhythm that used to make my heart quicken with anticipation. Now each step sounded like a countdown to confrontation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He appeared in the doorway, tall and impossibly handsome in that effortless way that had first caught my attention at a charity gala 6 years ago. Dark hair slightly mussed, sleeves rolled up to expose forearms corded with veins, the arms that had held me through my father's funeral, that had gestured expansively as he described the empire we'd build together. "Hey, beautiful," he said, smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. Crisis averted. The wrong lace shipped to the New York atelier, but I sorted it. He crossed to the bed, dropping a kiss on my forehead. "You okay? You look pale." I looked up at him, searching his face for some sign that he knew, that he felt the weight of his betrayal. There was nothing but the same confident concern he'd always shown. "Just tired," I said, the lie tasting metallic on my tongue. "I think I'm coming down with something." "Poor baby." His hand cupped my cheek, thumb brushing over my skin. I fought the urge to recoil. "Why don't you take a bath and I'll bring you some tea?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. As he turned toward the bathroom, I caught sight of his phone peeking from his back pocket. How many messages to my sister were stored there? How many lies? When the bathroom door closed and the water started running, I took a deep breath and moved to his closet. In the back, behind the row of impeccable suits, was his safe. The combination was my birthday, another irony that wasn't lost on me. Inside, past the business documents and the vintage watch collection his father had left him, I found a small velvet box. With trembling fingers, I opened it. A platinum ring winked up at me, the diamond larger than the one on my own finger. Inscribed inside the band, "For the mother of my child, forever yours, B." I snapped the box shut and replaced it exactly as I'd found it, then closed the safe and returned to sit on the bed, my mind racing, my heart encased in ice. The doorbell rang 15 minutes later. Bennett was still in the shower. Always took his time, that man. I hurried downstairs, yanking open the front door to find Vera, her copper hair windblown, eyes sharp with concern. "What happened?" she asked, stepping inside and enveloping me in a hug that smelled of sandalwood and loyalty. I pulled back, keeping my voice low. "Fiona is pregnant with Bennett's baby, and she's wearing my wedding dress to her baby shower next weekend." Vera's eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. "How do you know?" "I saw the emails, photos. It's all there." My voice cracked slightly. "He designed that dress for me, Vera. Said it would never be replicated. Now my sister is wearing it while carrying his child." Vera's hands gripped my shoulders. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, straightening my spine. "I'm going to that baby shower." "Elena." "No, listen. I've spent 5 years helping him build Eternal Vows. My connections, my family money as startup capital, my ideas that he claimed as his own. I'm not walking away with nothing while they celebrate in my dress." Vera studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but you're not going alone." She pulled out her phone. "I'm texting Marcus." "Marcus?" "Her brother, the corporate lawyer who'd offered to review my prenup when Bennett first presented it. The prenup I'd waved away because I was too in love to imagine needing protection. "Tell him I need to meet. Monday. His office." Vera typed quickly, then looked back at me. "What about tonight? Do you want to stay at my place?" I shook my head. "No, I need to be here. I need to..." I trailed off, not sure what I needed anymore. "You need to gather information," Vera finished for me, her voice hardening. "Evidence. Anything you can use." From upstairs came the sound of the shower shutting off. Vera squeezed my hand. "Call me anytime. I mean it. Middle of the night, whatever." After she left, I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Bennett was toweling his hair dry, another towel slung low on his hips. Once the sight would have made me cross the room and run my hands over his chest. Now I could only see him touching my sister with those same hands. "Who is at the door?" he asked, casual as a summer breeze. "Courier," I lied. "Wrong address." He nodded, dropping his towel and reaching for the boxer briefs in his drawer. I watched him dress. This stranger I'd shared a bed with for 5 years. This man who'd promised me forever while planting his seed in my sister's womb. "I forgot to tell you," he said, buttoning his shirt. "I've got a meeting with that new investor tomorrow. The one from Chicago. Might run late." Another lie. I knew now there was no investor from Chicago. The sickness I'd feigned earlier felt real now, crawling up my throat. "That's fine," I said. "I've got plenty to keep me busy." Bennett crossed to where I sat, tilting my chin up with one finger. "You sure you're okay? You seem off." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Go ahead with your meeting. I'll probably turn in early anyway." He kissed me, and it took everything in me not to flinch. His lips, that had once felt like coming home, now felt like invasion. But I kissed him back, playing the role of devoted wife one last time. After he fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and made my way to my office down the hall. From the bottom drawer of my desk, I pulled out the leather-bound journal my grandmother had given me when I graduated college. "For your greatest dreams and deepest secrets," she'd written inside the cover. I hadn't written in it for years. Now I opened to a fresh page and uncapped my fountain pen. In the pool of light from my desk lamp, I wrote a single sentence. "When they think they've written you out of the story, pick up the pen." I stared at the words for a long time, then underlined them 3 times. My hands were steady, my mind suddenly, strangely clear. I closed the journal and returned it to the drawer. Tomorrow, I would start gathering evidence. Tomorrow, I would call Marcus and begin untangling my finances from Bennett's. Tomorrow, I would begin the painful process of extraction. But tonight, I had one more thing to do. I opened my laptop and navigated to my sister's baby registry. Among the high-end strollers and organic crib bedding, I found what I was looking for, the location of her shower. The Riverview Estate, Portland's most exclusive event venue. The place where Bennett and I had held our engagement party. I opened a new tab and typed in the venue's website. They knew me there. I'd recommended them to countless friends over the years. The event coordinator, Rachel, had always been particularly attentive. "Rachel," I typed in an email, "I hope this finds you well. I understand my sister Fiona is hosting her baby shower at Riverview next Saturday. I'd like to arrange a little surprise, a table for 2 near hers. Nothing obtrusive, just close enough that I can see her reaction when I present my gift. Can you help with this? Discretion is key. I don't want to spoil the surprise." I hit send, then closed my laptop. Walking to the window, I gazed out at the Portland skyline. Lights twinkling like the future Bennett had promised me. The future that now belonged to my sister. "When they think they've written you out of the story, pick up the pen," I whispered to my reflection in the glass. And for the first time since seeing those emails, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't pain. It was purpose. That line, "When they think they've written you out of the story, pick up the pen," became my mantra over the next few days. I whispered it in the shower while Bennett was downstairs making breakfast as if nothing had changed. I repeated it silently while sitting across from him at dinner, watching him check his phone for work emergencies that I now knew were messages from my sister. I wrote it again and again in my journal, each repetition strengthening my resolve like a muscle being trained for battle. Monday came with relentless sunshine that felt like mockery. I told Bennett I had a migraine and couldn't possibly attend the brunch with the fabric suppliers he'd scheduled. He kissed my forehead, concern in his eyes that I now recognized as performance, and left me alone in our cavernous home. The moment his car disappeared down our winding driveway, I was moving. First, to his office. The lock on his filing cabinet surrendered to the spare key I'd found years ago and tucked away just in case. Inside, neatly labeled folders revealed the skeletal structure of his betrayal, a lease agreement for an apartment downtown I'd never heard of, insurance policies with Fiona listed as beneficiary, a new will drafted 3 months ago that I hadn't been told about. I photographed everything with methodical precision, then returned each document exactly as I'd found it. In his desk drawer, a stack of ultrasound images, each one labeled with dates and measurements. My hands trembled as I photographed these two, noting the name at the top, Fiona Blackwood. She'd taken my name as well as my husband. My phone buzzed. A text from Vera. Marcus is ready whenever you are. His office, or neutral ground? I thought of the restaurant below Marcus's law firm, a quiet place with private booths and discreet servers. Neutral ground. The usual place. Noon. At Verlaine's, Marcus was already waiting in a corner booth, legal pad in front of him, expression grave beneath his wire-rimmed glasses. He stood when he saw me, engulfing me in a bear hug that momentarily cracked my carefully constructed composure. Vera told me the outline, he said when we were seated, his voice low and controlled in the way that had made him such a formidable opponent in court. But I need details, Elena. Everything you know, everything you suspect, everything you've found. I slid my phone across the table, open to the folder of evidence I'd compiled. It's been going on for at least a year, maybe longer. The baby is definitely his. I found prenatal documents with his name listed as the father. And he's giving her my wedding dress, the one he designed for me, the one he claimed would never be replicated. Marcus scrolled through the photos, his expression darkening with each swipe. The dress, that's intellectual property. He's the designer, but you were the inspiration, the model. That dress launched his career. It was supposed to be just for me, I said, my voice smaller than I intended. A symbol of what we were building together. Marcus looked up, his eyes sharp with understanding. And now it's a symbol of what they're destroying. He tapped his pen against the legal pad. The prenup. I know, I was an idiot to sign it. Not necessarily. There's a clause about infidelity that could work in your favor. And if he's been using company resources to fund this affair, the apartment, the gifts, that violates several sections about company assets. He made notes as we talked, asking pointed questions about finances, about timeline, about witnesses. I answered as calmly as I could, though inside I was screaming. The baby shower, Marcus said finally. Vera mentioned you're planning to attend? I nodded. This Saturday. I've arranged to be seated nearby. Marcus leaned forward. Elena, are you sure that's wise? Confronting them publicly could complicate the legal proceedings. I'm not going to cause a scene, I said, though part of me wanted nothing more than to tear the dress from Fiona's body, to expose their betrayal to everyone they'd deceived. I just need to see it for myself, to make it real. Marcus sighed but didn't argue further. In that case, wear something spectacular. And bring Vera. She'll keep you grounded. I managed a small smile, already planned on both counts. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. We'll get through this, Elena. You're stronger than both of them combined. Back at home, I found an email from Rachel at Riverview Estate, confirming my table reservation. As requested, you'll be seated at table 12, which offers a clear view of the mother-to-be's table without being obvious. I've noted your request for discretion. I sent a quick thank you, then moved to my closet. What does one wear to watch their sister flaunt a stolen wedding dress while celebrating a stolen future? My fingers trailed over silks and wools, cashmeres and linens, before stopping on a dress I hadn't worn since before my marriage. Deep crimson, structured shoulders, a neckline that suggested rather than revealed. I'd worn it the night I first met Bennett, at the gala where he'd approached me with a glass of champagne and a line about destiny. Fitting to wear it now as I prepared to rewrite that destiny. The days crawled by, each one of exercise and deception. Bennett continued his charade of devoted husband, while I maintained my facade of oblivious wife. We moved around each other in a macabre dance, all false smiles, and emptier promises. Friday night, he announced he needed to go to the studio. Final touches on the spring collection, he said, the lie smooth as silk on his tongue. Don't wait up. I kissed him goodbye, the taste of it sour in my mouth. Take your time, I said. I've got plenty to keep me occupied. When the door closed behind him, I moved to the window and watched his car disappear down the street. Not toward his studio downtown, but toward the highway that led to the apartment he'd rented for my sister. I opened my laptop and pulled up the traffic camera feed that covered that intersection, a trick Vera had taught me, using publicly available cameras to track Bennett's movements. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, his distinctive black Audi appeared on the screen, turning not toward downtown but onto the ramp that would take him to Fiona's neighborhood. Evidence, mounting like snowflakes into an avalanche. I closed the laptop and turned my attention to tomorrow's mission. The crimson dress waited on a hanger, newly steamed. Beside it, the shoes I'd wear, not the comfortable flats I'd grown accustomed to, but the stilettos from my pre-Bennett days, when I'd been known for my impeccable style rather than as Elena Blackwood's supportive wife. My phone chimed with a text from Vera. Everything set for tomorrow? Yes, I replied. He thinks I'm having brunch with the museum board. Will you drive? Of course. Picking you up at 11. Wear something that makes them choke on their mimosas. I smiled despite myself. Vera had always known exactly what to say. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect early autumn day that wedding planners charged extra for. Bennett had left before I woke, a note on his pillow explaining he had an emergency fitting at the studio. Another lie to add to the collection. I took my time getting ready, applying my makeup with surgical precision, styling my hair in loose waves that framed my face. When I slipped into the crimson dress, I was surprised to find it still fit perfectly, perhaps even better than before, now that grief had carved away a few pounds. I was fastening my grandmother's pearl earrings when Vera arrived, resplendent in navy blue, her copper hair swept into an elegant updo. You look dangerous, she said approvingly, surveying me from the doorway. That's the idea. The drive to Riverview Estate passed in charged silence. I watched Portland slide by outside the window, the familiar streets suddenly alien, as if I were seeing them from a great distance. You don't have to go through with this, Vera said finally, as we approached the venue's winding driveway. We could turn around right now, go back to my place, open a bottle of wine, and start planning your glorious single life. I turned to look at her, this friend who had stood by me through everything. I need to see it, to make it real. Otherwise, some part of me will always wonder if I imagined the whole thing. Vera nodded, understanding in her eyes. Just remember, no matter what happens in there, you're not alone. Riverview Estate stood like a sentinel at the edge of the water, its stone facade reflecting centuries of Portland history. As children, Fiona and I had dreamed of having our weddings here, imagining ourselves as princesses in a fairy tale. I'd had my engagement party within these walls. Now my sister was celebrating the child she'd conceived with my husband under the same roof. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rachel met us at the entrance, professional smile firmly in place. Ms. Blackwood, Ms. Reynolds, welcome. Your table is prepared as requested. The other guests are already being seated for the luncheon. She led us through the grand foyer and into the garden room, where sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows illuminating round tables draped in pale blue linens. At the center of the room, on a slightly raised platform, sat the mother-to-be's table, already half filled with beaming guests. And there she was, Fiona. My little sister. The girl who'd followed me around as a child, who'd cried when I left for college, who'd been my maid of honor 5 years ago. She was radiant in ivory silk, my wedding dress, altered to accommodate her pregnant belly. The sweetheart neckline that Bennett had designed to showcase my collarbones now framed her fuller chest. The handmade lace that had taken artisans months to create now stretched across her swollen abdomen. The dress that had been my singular glory, now her borrowed triumph. I faltered for a moment, my courage wavering like a candle in a draught, Vera's hand found mine, squeezing tight, anchoring me to the moment. "Table 12, as requested," Rachel murmured, gesturing to a small table positioned with a perfect view of Fiona's table without being directly in her line of sight. "Your server will be with you shortly." We sat, Vera positioning herself so she could watch both Fiona and the entrance. I arranged my napkin in my lap, grateful for the familiar ritual that gave my trembling hands something to do. "She hasn't seen us yet," Vera reported in a low voice. "She's too busy playing Queen Bee." I looked up carefully. Fiona was holding court, one hand resting on her belly, the other gesturing animatedly as she spoke to the women clustered around her. Our mother sat beside her, beaming with pride, occasionally reaching out to touch Fiona's arm or straighten the necklace at her throat. My mother, who had no idea her youngest daughter was carrying her son-in-law's child. Or did she? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "Champagne, ladies?" A server appeared at our table, tray balanced expertly on one palm. "Yes, please," Vera said. "Both of us." I raised an eyebrow at her. "Trust me," she muttered, "you're going to need it." The server poured 2 flutes of golden liquid, then discreetly withdrew. I took a sip, letting the bubbles burn down my throat, a welcome distraction from the burning behind my eyes. And then he arrived. Bennett strode into the room like he owned it, immaculate in a tailored suit the color of thunderclouds. In his hands, a small gift box wrapped in silver paper with a pristine white bow. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and clapping shoulders as he made his way to the center table. Fiona's face transformed when she saw him, lighting up with a joy so naked it made my stomach clench. He bent to kiss her cheek, lingering just a fraction too long for propriety, then took the seat beside her, the one that should have been reserved for the baby's father. Which, of course, it was. "Oh, God," Vera breathed. "They're not even trying to hide it." "Why would they?" I replied, my voice strangely calm. "No one here knows, except us." As I watched, Bennett placed the silver gift box on the table in front of Fiona. She looked at him questioningly, her hand going to the collar of my wedding dress. My dress, in a gesture I recognized as nervousness. He nodded encouragingly, and she carefully untied the bow. I couldn't see what was inside from this distance, but I didn't need to. I already knew it was a platinum ring with a diamond larger than mine, inscribed with words of eternal devotion. I knew because I'd seen it in his safe, waiting for this moment. Fiona's hand flew to her mouth, eyes widening in theatrical surprise. She nodded frantically, tears spilling down her cheeks as Bennett slipped the ring onto her finger. Her left hand, I noticed with detached interest. Not even waiting for my body to be cold, metaphorically speaking, before replacing me. Applause broke out around the table. My mother was crying now too, clutching Fiona's hand, admiring the ring that sparkled even from this distance. No one seemed to find it strange that my sister was accepting an engagement ring at her baby shower, while wearing a wedding dress. No one questioned the narrative they were being sold. "Elena," Vera said, her voice tense with warning, "we should go. You've seen enough." But I hadn't. Not yet. Because now Bennett was standing, raising his champagne flute for a toast. The room quieted expectantly, all eyes on the handsome designer, whose bridal empire had dressed half the women in the room for their own weddings. "To Fiona," he said, his voice carrying easily across the space, "who has given me the greatest gift a man could ask for, a future filled with love and family. And to our son, who will carry on the Blackwood name with pride." Glasses raised around the room, murmurs of approval, smiles all around. "And," Bennett continued, his gaze sweeping the room, "to new beginnings. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, but if we're brave enough to follow where love leads, we find ourselves exactly where we're meant to be." It was then that his eyes found mine across the room. For a single frozen moment, we stared at each other, husband and wife, betrayer and betrayed. I saw the exact instant recognition dawned, the precise second his carefully constructed world began to fracture. I raised my champagne flute in silent acknowledgement, then took a deliberate sip, never breaking eye contact. Bennett faltered, his toast trailing off unfinished. Fiona, noticing his distraction, followed his gaze to where I sat, poised and unsmiling in crimson. Her face drained of color, the hand bearing her new ring dropping to cover her belly, a protective gesture that told me everything I needed to know about her capacity for remorse. "Now," I said quietly to Vera. "Now we can go." I stood, smoothing the skirt of my dress with steady hands. Every eye in the room was on me now, confusion rippling through the crowd like wind through wheat. My mother half rose from her seat, mouth opening in shock or protest. I couldn't tell which, and frankly, I didn't care. With deliberate grace, I walked toward the exit, Vera close behind me. As I passed Fiona's table, I paused, just long enough to look my sister in the eye. "The dress suits you," I said, my voice carrying in the suddenly silent room. "But then, you always did look best in borrowed glory." The silence that followed me out of Riverview Estate wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the vacuum left by a truth bomb, detonating in the middle of a carefully constructed lie. As the heavy doors closed behind us, I heard the first ripples of chaos breaking out. Gasps, questions, the distinctive sound of my mother calling my name in that half-panicked tone she reserved for public embarrassments. Vera and I walked through the grand foyer without looking back, our heels clicking in perfect sync against the marble floors. Outside, autumn sunshine bathed everything in golden light, oblivious to the darkness I carried within me. "That," Vera said as we reached her car, "was the most magnificent exit I've ever witnessed." I slid into the passenger seat, suddenly exhausted. I didn't even say what I planned to say. "You didn't need to. Your presence was enough." She started the engine. "Where to now?" I leaned my head back against the leather seat. "Home." "Elena, are you sure? Bennett will be busy damage controlling for hours." "Probably days." I turned to look at her. "I need to get some things while I have the chance." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "Right. Operation Extraction begins." The drive back to my house. No, not my house anymore. Just a structure that had contained my delusions. Passed in contemplative silence. I watched Portland slide by, the familiar streets, the neighborhoods where Bennett and I had once strolled hand in hand, planning our future. A future he'd decided to have with my sister instead. At home, I moved with swift efficiency. I'd prepared for this moment mentally, mapping out exactly what I would take and what I would leave. Clothes, jewelry that had been gifts from my parents, my grandmother's pearls, my personal laptop and external hard drives. Financial documents I'd secretly copied over the past week. The journal containing my thoughts, my pain, my evolving resolve. What I left behind spoke volumes. The wedding photos, the gifts Bennett had given me over the years, the furniture we'd chosen together, the material trappings of a marriage built on shifting sand. Vera helped in silence, carrying boxes to her car, not asking if I was sure, not suggesting alternatives. She knew me well enough to recognize the steel in my spine, the clarity in my eyes. As I did one final sweep of the master bedroom, my gaze caught on something I'd almost forgotten, a small wooden box, hand-carved, that had belonged to my grandfather. Inside were the sketches I'd made when Bennett and I first discussed my wedding dress, before he took over the design completely. My original vision, in my own hand. I tucked the box under my arm and turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. On impulse, I pulled the crimson dress from my body, letting it pool on the floor like spilled wine. From my suitcase, I withdrew jeans and a simple black sweater, clothes that felt like armor in their normalcy. Let Bennett come home to find the dress abandoned, a crimson ghost haunting the space where our marriage had died. "Ready?" Vera asked when I descended the stairs. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As we pulled away from the house, I didn't look back. Some scenes don't deserve a second glance. Vera's loft downtown welcomed me with open windows and the scent of fresh coffee. Her cat, Oscar, regarded me with suspicious yellow eyes from his perch on the bookshelf, then apparently decided I was acceptable and resumed his nap. You'll stay here as long as you need, Vera said, setting down my suitcase in her spare room. No arguments. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the day finally catching up to me. What happens now? Now, she said, sitting beside me. You breathe. You sleep. And tomorrow, you fight. My phone had been silent since we left the shower. Unusual, considering the bomb I'd dropped. As if summoned by my thoughts, it lit up with an incoming call. Bennett. I showed Vera the screen. You don't have to answer, she said. But I did. I needed to hear what lies he would spin, what justifications he would offer. Hello, Bennett. His voice came through strained, urgent. Elena, where are you? We need to talk about what happened today. Do we? I kept my tone neutral, devoid of the storm raging inside me. I think the situation was perfectly clear. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. My sister is wearing my wedding dress to celebrate carrying your child, while you give her an engagement ring. Did I miss anything? Silence stretched between us then. I was going to tell you. A laugh escaped me, bitter as burnt coffee. When? After the baby was born? After you moved her into our house? Or were you planning to just slowly erase me until no one remembered I existed? Elena, please, let me explain in person. I'm coming to get you. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. No, you're not. I'm not coming back, Bennett. Not today, not ever. You're being irrational. Just tell me where you are, and we can talk about this like adults. The condescension in his voice ignited something molten inside me. Like adults? Was it adult to sleep with my sister behind my back? Was it adult to use my money to fund your affair? Was it adult to put her in my wedding dress? The dress, he began. The dress you designed for me. The dress that launched your career. The dress you promised would never be replicated. My voice remained steady, though my hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. I wonder what the fashion blogs would say about that particular design choice. Silence again, this time heavier, loaded with calculation. When Bennett spoke again, his tone had shifted to something softer, reasonable, the voice he used to charm investors and soothe anxious brides. Elena, I know you're hurt. I understand that. But think about what you're doing. Your sister is pregnant. Do you really want to cause her stress right now? The manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. My sister should have thought about stress before she climbed into your bed. Or was it our bed, Bennett? Did you bring her into our home while I was away? This isn't like you, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. You don't lash out like this. You're compassionate, understanding. I was those things, I interrupted, to people who deserved them. You and Fiona forfeited that consideration the moment you decided to betray me. I could almost see him running his hand through his hair, the way he did when a design wasn't working or a client was being difficult. What do you want, Elena? Money? The house? Name it, and it's yours. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to understand what it feels like to have everything you've built stolen from under you. What I want is justice. Elena, I'll have my lawyer contact you. Don't call me again. I hung up before he could respond, then turned off my phone for good measure. Vera, who had heard every word, wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You were magnificent. I leaned into her embrace, suddenly exhausted. I don't feel magnificent. I feel hollowed out. That's the thing about betrayal, she said softly. It carves out spaces inside you. But those spaces can be filled with something new, something stronger. That night, I slept dreamlessly in Vera's spare room, Oscar curled against my feet like a furry anchor. When morning came, I felt something I hadn't expected. A curious lightness, as if I'd set down a burden I hadn't realized I was carrying. Over coffee, Vera and I made plans. First, a meeting with Marcus to discuss legal strategy. Then, a visit to my bank to secure my personal accounts. Finally, a stop at my favorite cafe to remind myself that life contained simple pleasures that had nothing to do with Bennett Blackwood. My phone, when I finally turned it back on, was flooded with messages. Bennett, alternating between pleas and veiled threats. My mother, demanding an explanation for my scene at the shower. Friends and acquaintances, confused and concerned. And, surprisingly, a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Darcy, Fiona's assistant. We need to talk. It's about the company. And the dress. I showed the message to Vera, who raised an eyebrow. Could be a trap. Or it could be valuable information, I countered. Darcy has been with Eternal Vows since the beginning. She knows everything about the business. After some deliberation, I agreed to meet Darcy at a small bookstore cafe far from both Bennett's studio and his home. Vera insisted on coming with me, positioning herself at a nearby table with a clear view of our meeting, pretending to read while actually standing guard. Darcy arrived precisely on time, her usual immaculate appearance slightly frayed at the edges, hair not quite perfectly smoothed, eyes shadowed with fatigue. She slid into the seat across from me, hands clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't be here. If Bennett knew." "But he doesn't," I assured her, "and he won't hear it from me." She nodded, took a steadying breath. "I've worked for Eternal Vows for 6 years. I believed in what we were building. The artistry, the integrity. I thought Bennett was a visionary." "He is," I said. "Just not the kind we thought." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I knew something was wrong when he started working on the dress alterations after hours. He said it was a special project for a VIP client, but he was so secretive about it. Then Fiona started coming to the studio when everyone else had gone home. I kept my face neutral, though each word felt like a needle beneath my skin. "How long?" "At least a year, maybe longer." Darcy looked down at her coffee. "I'm sorry, Elena. I should have said something sooner." "Why didn't you?" She met my eyes then, her own filled with shame. "Because I was afraid. Not just of losing my job, but Bennett has a way of making you feel like you're nothing without him. Like your whole career depends on his good opinion." I knew exactly what she meant. Bennett cultivated dependence like other men cultivated roses, with careful, deliberate attention. "Why now?" I asked. "What changed?" Darcy reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "2 things. First, I found these when I was filing quarterly reports." She slit the envelope across the table. "Bennett has been moving company funds, your investment money, into personal accounts. For the apartment, for jewelry, for the baby." I opened the envelope and scanned the documents inside, bank statements, transfer records, all bearing Bennett's signature and my business account numbers. "He's been systematically draining the company," Darcy continued. "Not enough to collapse it immediately, but enough that when the next collection launches and doesn't have sufficient backing, Eternal Vows will falter," I finished. "And everyone will blame the failure on my departure." She nodded. "That's what I overheard him telling Fiona yesterday. That when the company struggles, he'll make sure everyone knows it's because you abandoned ship." The calculation in that plan made my blood run cold. Not just stealing my husband, my sister, my dress, but my reputation, my legacy in the business I'd helped build. "You said there were 2 things," I prompted. Darcy hesitated, then reached into her bag again. This time she withdrew a small flash drive. "The original designs for your wedding dress. The ones you created before Bennett took over." He told everyone the concept was entirely his, that the dress that launched Eternal Vows came from his singular vision. I stared at the flash drive, remembering the hours I'd spent sketching, the ideas I'd shared with Bennett in the early days of our relationship, when collaboration felt like love rather than appropriation. "He built his brand on your creativity," Darcy said quietly. "And he's planning to erase that part of the story completely." I closed my hand around the flash drive, feeling its edges press into my palm. "Why are you giving me this?" Darcy straightened in her chair, something like dignity returning to her posture. "Because I believe in giving credit where it's due. And because I handed in my resignation this morning. You quit? I couldn't be part of it anymore. The lies, the manipulation. Not after seeing what he did to you. She stood, gathering her bag. There's one more thing you should know. The dress. Your dress isn't just being worn for the shower. Bennett's planning a major publicity campaign around it. The evolution of a signature design, he's calling it. Showing how his original bridal creation has been quote, reimagined for maternal beauty. The audacity of it struck me speechless. Not content to steal my dress for a private event, they plan to plaster it across magazines and websites, rewriting history in the process. Darcy touched my shoulder lightly as she prepared to leave. Use what I've given you, Elena. Don't let them erase you. After she left, Vera joined me at the table, eyebrows raised in question. We have evidence, I said, showing her the envelope and flash drive. Financial and creative. Bennett isn't just stealing my present. He's trying to rewrite my past. Vera's expression hardened. Then we need to make sure the true story gets told. The meeting with Marcus that afternoon took on new urgency with Darcy's evidence in hand. In his office, with its view of the Portland skyline, he spread the documents across his desk like battle plans. This changes everything, he said, tapping the financial records. This isn't just personal betrayal, it's fraud. He's misappropriated company funds for personal use. Can we prove it? I asked. Marcus nodded slowly. With these records, yes. But we need to move quickly. If Bennett realizes what we have, he might try to cover his tracks. He outlined a strategy that made my head spin with legal terms and tactical maneuvers. Injunctions, restraining orders, forensic accounting. The machinery of justice grinding into motion. What about the dress? I asked when he paused for breath. The designs? Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering. That's trickier. Intellectual property in fashion is notoriously difficult to protect. But if we can prove the original concept was yours, and that Bennett is now misrepresenting its provenance for commercial gain. He is, I said firmly, and I have the original sketches to prove it. Then we might be able to stop the campaign before it launches. He made another note on his legal pad. But Elena, you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. Bennett won't go down without a fight. Neither will I said, with a conviction that surprised even me. Outside Marcus's office, the day had turned gray, clouds gathering like bruises over the city. Vera looped her arm through mine as we walked to her car. What now? She asked. I looked up at the threatening sky. Now we prepare for the storm. The storm broke sooner than expected. That evening, as Vera and I were sharing takeout and strategy at her loft, my phone lit up with a call from an unfamiliar number. Elena Blackwood? A woman's voice asked when I answered. Yes, this is Margot Winters from Style Quarterly. I was hoping to get your comment on the situation with Eternal Vows. My heart stuttered. What situation? The announcement just posted on their social media, that you've stepped down from your role due to, quote, personal differences with the creative direction. We're doing a piece on the changing of the guard and would love your perspective. I mouthed Style Quarterly to Vera, who immediately grabbed her tablet and pulled up Eternal Vows' social media accounts. I'm afraid I can't comment at this time, I told Margot, keeping my voice steady with effort. But I appreciate your call. Of course, if you change your mind. You'll be the first to know, I promised, then ended the call. Vera turned the tablet to face me. There it was, in elegant typeface against the signature Eternal Vows cream background. Eternal Vows announces the departure of Elena Blackwood from her role as brand ambassador and creative consultant. While we value her early contributions to the company, creative differences have led to an amicable separation. Eternal Vows looks forward to an exciting new chapter under the continued leadership of founder and head designer Bennett Blackwood, with new creative director Fiona Laurent joining the team. Look for our groundbreaking maternity bridal campaign launching next month. My sister's maiden name, Laurent, used as if she hadn't been planning to take my husband's name all along. The calculated precision of it made me feel physically ill. They're getting ahead of the story, Vera said, her voice tight with anger. Controlling the narrative before we can act. My phone buzzed with another call. another fashion journalist, then another. My email inbox began filling with interview requests. The fashion world, always hungry for drama, had caught the scent of blood in the water. I silenced my phone and closed my laptop. We need to accelerate the timeline. Vera nodded grimly. I'll call Marcus. While she did, I moved to the window, watching rain begin to fall over Portland, each drop a silver needle in the gathering darkness. Bennett had made his move, public and decisive. He thought he was writing me out of the story, erasing my contributions with a press release and a new title for my sister. But he'd forgotten something crucial. The pen was now in my hand, and I was just beginning to write. Morning broke with the steady rhythm of rain against Vera's loft windows. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with plans and counterplans, mentally rehearsing the steps of the dance I was about to begin. The rain felt appropriate, cleansing, washing away the person I used to be, revealing someone stronger beneath. You ready for this? Vera asked, setting a steaming mug of coffee on the table in front of me. I wrapped my hands around the warmth, drawing strength from its solidity. As ready as I'll ever be. My phone, which had been silenced overnight, showed 17 missed calls and 32 text messages when I finally checked it. Most were from fashion journalists seeking comment. 3 were from my mother, demanding explanations. 1 was from Bennett, the message preview showing only, "We need to talk before this gets..." Before this gets what? Out of hand? Too late for that. The most surprising message was from Tessa Romano, editor-in-chief of Mode magazine, the most influential fashion publication in the country, and one that had featured Bennett's designs prominently over the years. Elena, this is Tessa. Something doesn't add up about the Eternal Vows announcement. I'd like to hear your side. Confidentially, of course. Call me. I showed the message to Vera, who raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Tessa's known for protecting designers, not questioning them. She's known for protecting the truth, I corrected. And she's never liked being manipulated. After conferring with Marcus, who advised caution but acknowledged the potential benefits of having Mode on our side, I called Tessa back. Her familiar voice, crisp as fresh linen, answered on the second ring. Elena, thank you for returning my call. Of course, though I'm surprised to hear from you. Are you? A hint of amusement colored her tone. You shouldn't be. I've been in this business for 30 years. I know when I'm being fed a sanitized narrative. I moved to the window, watching rain patterns shift across the glass. And what narrative is that? That you've simply walked away from a company you helped build because of vague, creative differences. That your sister, who has no design background whatsoever, is suddenly creative director. That Bennett Blackwood, who has built his reputation on original designs, is repurposing your wedding dress for a maternity campaign. She paused. Did I miss anything? Only the part where my sister is pregnant with my husband's child, I said, the words still bitter on my tongue. Tessa's sharp intake of breath was the only indication of her surprise. I see. Another pause. That certainly adds context. Context I'm sure Bennett left out of his press narrative. He did indeed. Papers shuffled in the background. Elena, I'm not calling just out of journalistic curiosity. I've admired your eye for design since you first appeared on the scene with Bennett. Many of us in the industry have wondered how much of Eternal Vows' signature aesthetic actually comes from you. I gripped the phone tighter. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that perhaps it's time for the fashion world to hear the true story of Eternal Vows. Not Bennett's carefully crafted mythology, but the reality, including your contributions. Hope fluttered in my chest, a fragile thing I was afraid to nurture. Why would you do that for me? Not for you, Tessa corrected. For the integrity of an industry I care about. Fashion may seem frivolous to outsiders, but those of us who live in it know it's built on creativity, vision, and truth. When someone tries to rewrite that truth, it matters. We talked for nearly an hour. I told her everything. My original design concepts, how Bennett had gradually taken more credit, the financial manipulation, the betrayal with my sister. Through it all, Tessa listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions but never doubting my account. "I'll need evidence," she said finally. "For a story of this magnitude, we need more than allegations." "I have the original design sketches," I told her, "financial records showing misappropriation of company funds, and a witness, Bennett's former assistant, who can corroborate everything." "Good. Send it all to me, securely. My private email, not the mode server." She paused, then added more gently, "Elena, are you sure you want to do this? Once this story breaks, there's no going back." I thought about the announcement declaring my amicable separation from Eternal Vows, about my wedding dress stretched across my sister's pregnant belly, about Bennett's systematic erasure of my contributions, personal and professional. "I'm sure," I said firmly, "some stories need to be told, even when they hurt." After the call ended, Vera looked at me expectantly. "Well?" "Mode is interested in the real story. If we can provide enough evidence, they'll run it, possibly as their cover feature next month." "Just in time to counter Bennett's maternity bridal campaign," Vera noted with satisfaction. Perfect timing? But timing, as it turned out, was about to accelerate beyond our control. That afternoon, as we were organizing documents to send to Tessa, my phone rang with a call from Marcus. "Elena, check your email, now." Something in his tone sent ice through my veins. I opened my laptop and found the message he'd forwarded. A legal notice from Bennett's attorneys, threatening a defamation lawsuit if I spoke publicly about Eternal Vows, or my false claims, regarding the company's finances and design origins. "He's trying to silence you," Marcus said, his voice hard with anger. "But he's made a critical mistake. By putting these threats in writing, he's given us grounds for a counteraction." "What kind of counteraction?" "An emergency injunction to prevent the misuse of your intellectual property, specifically your wedding dress design, pending resolution of ownership claims, and a formal complaint with the Business Ethics Board regarding the financial irregularities." I read the threatening letter again, noting the cold, impersonal language that stood in stark contrast to the passionate promises Bennett had once made me. "Do it," I said. "All of it." "Elena, this means war. Legal, public, messy. Are you prepared for what that entails?" I thought of the press release announcing my departure, of the dress that was meant to be uniquely mine now being marketed as a maternity design, of the years I'd spent believing I was building something meaningful, only to discover I was being systematically written out of the narrative. I'm not just prepared, Marcus. I'm determined. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of legal filings, evidence compilation, and strategic planning. Darcy, Bennett's former assistant, agreed to go on record with Mode about what she'd witnessed. My original design sketches were authenticated by an expert in fashion intellectual property. The financial records were organized to clearly demonstrate the pattern of misappropriation. Through it all, Bennett kept trying to reach me. Calls, texts, even an appearance at Vera's building that the doorman thankfully intercepted. His messages oscillated between threats and pleas, the desperation growing more evident with each attempt. "Elena, you're making a terrible mistake. We can work this out privately. Think about what you're doing to the company, to all our employees. Your sister is pregnant. Do you really want to cause her this kind of stress?" That last one made me laugh out loud, a sharp sound without humor. "Still using Fiona's pregnancy as a shield," I told Vera, showing her the message. "As if her condition gives them immunity from consequences." "Classic manipulator move," Vera agreed. "Using your compassion against you." But compassion was a luxury I could no longer afford, not when Bennett and Fiona had shown none to me. On the third day after our legal counterattack began, Tessa called with news. "We're running the story," she said without preamble. "Front cover of next month's issue. The true pattern, how Elena Blackwood's vision built Eternal Vows." My breath caught. "You're sure about this?" "The evidence is overwhelming, Elena. Your original sketches clearly inform the design language that became Eternal Vows' signature style. The financial records show systematic diversion of company resources. And Darcy's testimony about the work environment and credit appropriation is damning." Relief washed through me. Not just that Mode believed me, but that my contributions would finally be acknowledged. There's more, Tessa continued. 3 other former employees have come forward after hearing about our investigation. They all tell the same story. Bennett taking credit for collaborative work, particularly yours. One even had emails where he explicitly instructs the marketing team to downplay your role in collection development. I closed my eyes, absorbing this confirmation of what I'd long suspected. When does the issue come out? 3 weeks. But, she added, the online teaser goes live tomorrow morning. My heart skipped a beat. Tomorrow? That's fast. Fashion moves quickly, darling, especially when there's a scandal brewing. I could hear the smile in her voice. Besides, we want to get ahead of Bennett's maternity campaign launch. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long moment, feeling the ground shift beneath me. Tomorrow, the world would begin to see the truth. Tomorrow, the narrative Bennett had so carefully crafted would begin to unravel. You okay? Vera asked, sitting beside me on the couch. I'm not sure, I admitted. I've been fighting so hard to be heard, to have my contributions recognized. Now that it's happening, it feels overwhelming. She squeezed my hand. That's because you're not just reclaiming your professional reputation, Elena. You're reclaiming your entire sense of self. That night, I dreamed of dresses. White silk transforming into crimson, fabric tearing along seams, then restitching itself into new patterns, needles writing my name in delicate thread that glowed like fire. I woke at dawn feeling strangely calm, as if some internal storm had finally passed. The mode teaser dropped at 9 a.m. precisely. A striking image of my original wedding dress sketch beside a photo of the final design, with the headline, WHO really designed the dress? Mode investigates the truth behind Eternal Vows' signature creation. By 9:15, my phone was exploding with notifications. By 10, the fashion blogs had picked up the story. By noon, it had spread to mainstream news outlets. Bridal design empire built on stolen ideas? Fashion's power couple splits amid allegations of creative theft. Eternal Vows founder accused of misappropriating wife's designs. And then, more personally painful, sister ACT. Designer's wife claims sister stole husband an iconic dress. Vera monitored the coverage while I met with Marcus to review our legal position. The emergency injunction had been granted. Bennett was legally prohibited from using my wedding dress design in any commercial capacity, including the planned maternity campaign, until ownership could be established. The judge was particularly moved by the evidence of your original sketches, Marcus told me, satisfaction evident in his voice. And the financial investigation is proceeding. The preliminary audit has already flagged several significant irregularities. What happens next? I asked. Bennett will fight back. Hard. He has too much to lose not to. Marcus straightened his tie, a habit when he was preparing for battle. But we've got truth on our side, Elena. And in my experience, that counts for a lot. When I returned to Vera's loft that evening, exhausted but resolute, I found her waiting with an unexpected visitor. My mother. She stood as I entered, her face a complex map of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. Age had softened her features, but not her spine. She still carried herself with the rigid dignity that had defined my childhood. Elena, she said, my name sounding foreign on her lips. Mother. I set down my bag, not moving closer. This is a surprise. Vera called me. Said it was time we talked. She glanced at Vera, who shrugged unapologetically. You two needed to clear the air, Vera said. I'll give you privacy. She squeezed my shoulder as she passed, a silent message of support. When the door closed behind her, my mother and I stood in awkward silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between us. I saw the news, she finally said. About Bennett. And the designs. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Is it true? She asked. Did he really take credit for your work? Yes. The single word held years of accumulated frustration. He did. She moved to the window, looking out at the Portland skyline now glittering with evening lights. And Fiona? The baby? Also true. She closed her eyes briefly, pain flickering across her face. I didn't know, Elena. About the designs, the company. I swear I didn't. But you knew about the affair, I said, the accusation I'd been holding back finally breaking free. About Bennett and Fiona. You knew and you said nothing. She turned to face me, her expression suddenly vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. I suspected. But Fiona denied it when I asked. Said they were just friends, that he was helping her through a difficult time. And you believed her. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice, just like you always have. She's my daughter too, Elena. And I'm not? The question escaped before I could stop it, raw with decades of feeling like the less favored child. My mother's eyes widened. Of course you are. How can you even ask that? How can I not? When you've always made it so clear that Fiona was the special one, the one who deserved the spotlight. Even now, when she's stolen my husband, you're at her baby shower, beaming with pride. I didn't know he was the father, she protested. Fiona told me it was a man she'd met in Europe, that they'd had a brief relationship, but he wasn't in the picture. I laughed, a sound without humor. And again, you believed her, without question, without even considering that she might be lying. My mother sank onto the couch, suddenly looking every one of her 64 years. I've made mistakes, Elena, with both of you. But please believe me when I say I never wanted to see you hurt like this. I remained standing, arms crossed as if to physically hold myself together. Then why are you here now? To defend her again? To ask me to drop the lawsuits, forget the betrayal, pretend none of this happened for the sake of family harmony? No. She looked up, her gaze direct and clear. I'm here to say I'm sorry. And to ask how I can help make things right. The simple admission, so unexpected, momentarily robbed me of words. In all my imagined confrontations with my mother, I'd never pictured her apologizing, never envisioned her offering support. You? Want to help me? I finally managed. She nodded, a tentative smile softening her features. I was wrong, Elena, about so many things. I should have seen what was happening, should have asked more questions, pushed for the truth instead of accepting comfortable lies. I uncrossed my arms, the defensive posture no longer necessary. Why now? What changed? I saw the sketches in the Mode article, your sketches. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. I recognized your style immediately. The same flowing lines, the same attention to detail you showed in your art as a teenager. And I realized that not only had Bennett stolen your work, but I'd failed to recognize your talent all along. She reached into her handbag and withdrew a folded newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. Do you remember this? I took it carefully, unfolding the delicate paper. It was a photo from the regional art competition I'd won at 16, me standing proudly beside my photograph of sunrise over the Columbia River. The same photo that had hung on our mantel for exactly 1 week before being replaced with Fiona's homecoming queen portrait. You kept this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've kept everything, Elena. Every award, every article, every achievement. She paused, swallowing hard. I just never knew how to show you that I was proud. It was easier with Fiona. Her accomplishments were obvious, conventional. Yours were more subtle, more complex. I didn't always understand them, but I always admired them. I sat beside her on the couch, the clipping trembling slightly in my hands. You never said. I know. Another mistake in a long list. She covered my hand with hers, her touch hesitant but warm. But I'm saying it now, and I'm asking what you need from me to face what's coming next. What was coming next? The legal battles, the public scrutiny, the inevitable confrontation with Bennett and Fiona that couldn't be avoided forever. I'd been preparing to face it all alone, or with only Vera and Marcus by my side. The possibility of having my mother's support had never entered my calculations. I need the truth, I said finally. All of it. No more protecting Fiona, no more looking the other way. If you're on my side, really on my side, then I need to know everything you know about what's been happening. My mother straightened her shoulders, resolution hardening her features. Then let me tell you about the phone call I received from Bennett 2 days before the baby shower. About how he asked me to help convince you to sign over your remaining shares in Eternal Vows. About how he said it would be better for everyone if you stepped away completely. As she spoke, filling in pieces of the puzzle I hadn't even known were missing, I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger or vindication, but a deeper sense of clarity. The truth, however painful, was finally emerging into the light, and with it, the possibility not just of justice, but of healing. The storm I'd been bracing for was indeed coming. But now, unexpectedly, I wouldn't be standing alone when it broke. Morning brought with it a series of seismic shifts in the landscape of my confrontation with Bennett. First, the legal notification that he was challenging our emergency injunction, claiming sole ownership of all Eternal Vows designs, including my wedding dress. Second, a press statement from Eternal Vows denouncing Mode's irresponsible journalism and character assassination. And third, most surprisingly, a text from Fiona, "We need to talk. Alone. It's important." I showed the message to Vera, who immediately shook her head. "Absolutely not. It's a trap." "Probably," I agreed. "But what if it's not? What if she's finally ready to tell the truth? Or what if Bennett put her up to it? What if this is just another attempt to manipulate you?" I considered this, remembering all the times Fiona had been Bennett's unwitting accomplice in smaller manipulations, delivering messages that conveniently changed plans, reporting conversations that mysteriously aligned with his interests. But something about this felt different. The terseness of the message, the lack of emotional appeals or guilt triggers that typically characterized Fiona's communication style. "I think I need to hear what she has to say," I decided. But not alone, and not on their terms. In the end, we arranged to meet at the Portland Art Museum, a public place with enough privacy for conversation but too many witnesses for any scene-making. Vera would be nearby, watching from a discreet distance, and Marcus was on standby in case things took a legal turn. I arrived early, choosing a bench in the contemporary wing, where the stark white walls and minimalist sculptures created an atmosphere of clarity and truth. Fitting, I thought, for a conversation that needed both. Fiona appeared exactly on time, her pregnant silhouette unmistakable even from a distance. She wore a simple gray dress, her usual dramatic styling notably absent. No flashy jewelry, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She looked tired, I realized, with a jolt of unexpected sympathy. Tired and afraid. She spotted me and crossed the gallery, her steps hesitant. When she reached the bench, she didn't sit immediately, instead hovering awkwardly, as if unsure of her welcome. "Thank you for meeting me," she said finally. I gestured to the space beside me. "You said it was important." She sat, leaving careful inches between us. For a moment, she simply stared at her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. Then she reached into her purse and withdrew a small recording device. "I need you to hear something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before it's too late." She pressed play, and Bennett's voice filled the space between us, clear and calculating. "The injunction is a temporary setback. Once we launch the maternity campaign with you as the face, Elena's claims won't matter. The narrative will be about evolution, not theft. Your pregnancy, our future. That's what the public will see, not some old sketches and financial technicalities." A pause, then Fiona's voice, sounding smaller than I'd ever heard it. "But what if she can prove the designs were hers? What if people believe her?" Bennett's laugh, cold and confident. "People believe what we tell them to believe, Fi. That's how branding works. Elena was never the designer. She was the muse, the pretty face who inspired the real genius. By the time we're done, no one will remember her contributions at all." Another voice, one I didn't recognize. "And the financial issues, those could be serious, Bennett. Only if they can be traced. Which they can't, I've made sure of that. Everything is structured through shell companies, under Elena's maiden name. If anything comes to light, it will look like she's the one who diverted funds, not me." The recording ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. I looked at Fiona, really looked at her, seeing past the pregnancy, past the betrayal, to the sister I'd grown up with, the girl who'd once followed me everywhere, who'd cried when I left for college, who'd somehow lost her way so completely. When was this recorded? I asked quietly. 3 days ago, after the mode teaser came out. She returned the device to her purse with trembling hands. He doesn't know I have it. He thinks I'm still completely on his side. And you're not? Her eyes, so similar to my own, filled with tears. I don't know what side I'm on anymore, Elena. I just know I can't keep living this lie. Which lie? There seem to be so many. She flinched at the sharpness in my tone. All of them. The designs, the company, the baby. I stiffened. What about the baby? Fiona placed a protective hand over her belly. The baby is real. And it is Bennett's. That part wasn't a lie. Just everything else, then. She nodded, misery etched in every line of her face. It started so small, Elena. Just lunch, just talking. He said he felt unappreciated, that you were too busy with your own projects to see his vision for Eternal Vows. I was flattered that he wanted my opinion, that he seemed to value my input when my own career was going nowhere. So you slept with him. The words came out flat, factual. Not right away. Not for months. She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. But yes, eventually, and then when I got pregnant. He saw an opportunity, I finished for her. A way to transition from one sister to the other without losing control of the company. She nodded again. He said it was fate, that we could build something together, something even bigger than what he'd built with you. That I wouldn't just be the face of Eternal Vows, but a partner in every sense. And you believed him. I wanted to. Her voice cracked. I've always wanted what you had, Elena. The success, the recognition, the perfect marriage. It seemed like my chance to finally step out of your shadow. I laughed, a short, incredulous sound. My shadow? Fiona, you've been the golden child since we were teenagers. The homecoming queen, the social butterfly, the daughter whose accomplishments actually got displayed on the mantle. Surprise flickered across her face. Is that what you thought? That I was the favorite? Wasn't it obvious? She shook her head slowly. Mom and Dad were always so proud of you, Elena. Your grades, your designs, your business sense. Why can't you be more like your sister? Was practically their mantra throughout my adolescence. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this perspective with my own memories. Had we both been living in completely different versions of the same family? That doesn't excuse what you did, I said finally. What you're still doing. No, it doesn't. She met my gaze directly for the first time. Nothing excuses it. That's why I'm here. With a recording that conveniently shifts all blame to Bennett. Not to shift blame. To show you the truth. She leaned forward, urgency in every line of her body. He's planning to frame you, Elena. For the financial mismanagement. For everything. He's already started moving money. Creating a paper trail that leads back to you. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. Why are you telling me this now? Why not before, when it might have been easier to stop? Fiona's hand drifted to her belly again, an unconscious gesture of protection. Because I finally saw him clearly. After the Mode article, after your injunction, he was like a different person. Cold, calculating, talking about destroying you as if it were nothing. And I realized that once he was done with you, once he'd erased you completely. He could do the same to you, I finished. She nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Elena. I know what I've done is unforgivable. But I couldn't let him destroy you with lies. Not anymore. I sat back, processing this unexpected turn. The recording was damning. Evidence not just of Bennett's design theft, but of his intentional financial fraud and his plan to frame me for it. Combined with the documents we already had, It could shift the entire legal landscape in my favor. But trusting Fiona, after everything, that felt like stepping onto ice I knew was cracked. "Why should I believe you?" I asked. "How do I know this isn't just another manipulation?" She reached into her purse again and pulled out a flash drive. "Because I brought more than just the recording. Emails, documents, everything I could download from Bennett's private server. It's all here. The real financial records, the design theft, the plans for the maternity campaign. Everything he didn't want anyone to see." I took the flash drive, its small weight disproportionate to its potential impact. "You realize this could destroy Eternal Vows completely. The company, the brand, everything." "I know." Her voice was steady, despite the tears still flowing. "But it was built on lies, Elena. Maybe it needs to fall so something honest can take its place." As I looked at my sister, this woman who had betrayed me so completely, yet now sat before me offering truth as penance, I felt something unexpected stir within me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first fragile seedling of understanding. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "With the baby? With everything?" I slipped the flash drive into my pocket, its presence a reminder of what was at stake. "Now we make sure the truth comes out. All of it. No more secrets, no more lies, no more stolen stories." Fiona nodded, a mixture of fear and relief crossing her features. "And after that?" I stood, looking down at the sister who had once been my closest confidant before becoming my deepest betrayer. "After that, we'll see. The truth first, Fiona. Then we can talk about what comes next." As I walked away, Vera falling into step beside me after witnessing the exchange from a distance, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. Not happiness, not exactly, but clarity. Purpose. The sense that after months of being erased, I was finally writing myself back into existence. Not just professionally, but personally. And this time, the story would be entirely my own. The contents of Fiona's flash drive proved more explosive than even I had anticipated. Within hours of delivering it to Marcus, his office had transformed into a war room of legal activity. Associates poring over documents, financial experts tracing money trails, intellectual property specialists comparing design archives with timestamps and metadata that proved, beyond any reasonable doubt, that the cornerstone designs of Eternal Vows had originated with me. "This is..." Marcus trailed off, shaking his head as he scrolled through yet another damning email thread. "Career ending?" I suggested. "Beyond that, possibly criminal." He looked up, eyes sharp with the predatory gleam that had made him Portland's most feared litigator. "Bennett wasn't just stealing designs, Elena. He was committing systematic fraud, tax evasion, and now attempted framing. The fashion industry might forgive creative theft as, quote, inspiration, but the federal government takes a much dimmer view of financial crimes." The gravity of the situation settled over me like a weighted cloak. This wasn't just about reclaiming my designs or clearing my name anymore. This was about preventing Bennett from destroying lives, mine, potentially Fiona's, and those of everyone who worked for Eternal Vows. "What do we do?" I asked. Marcus closed his laptop with a decisive click. "First, we secure your position. The evidence on this drive gives us everything we need for an ironclad case against Bennett's claims. Second, we contact the district attorney about the financial fraud. And third," he paused, studying me carefully, "we consider what you want the endgame to be." "The endgame?" "Bennett is finished, professionally, possibly legally. But Eternal Vows doesn't have to be. The company, the brand, the employees. Their fate is largely in your hands now." I hadn't allowed myself to think that far ahead, too focused on survival and vindication to consider what might come after. But Marcus was right. This wasn't just about destroying what Bennett had built on lies. It was about deciding what should rise from the ashes. "I need time," I said finally. "To think, to plan." Marcus nodded. "You have some. Not much, but some. In the meantime, I'll set the legal machinery in motion." That evening, back at Vera's loft, I spread sketchbooks across her dining table, Not just my recent work, but designs dating back to college, to the early days with Bennett, to the genesis of what would become Eternal Vows' signature aesthetic. Page after page of my creative DNA, the artistic fingerprint that Bennett had claimed as his own. "What are you looking for?" Vera asked, setting a mug of tea beside me. I traced a particular curve on a wedding gown sketch from 6 years ago, recognizing how it had evolved into the distinctive silhouette that launched Bennett's career. My voice. The thread that connects all of these designs. Your artistic signature. Exactly. I flipped to another page, then another. Bennett didn't just steal individual designs. He stole my entire design language, the vocabulary I used to express my vision. And then he convinced me that the voice was his all along. Vera pulled up a chair, studying the sketches with fresh eyes. "It's so obvious now. The way you use negative space, the flow from structure to fluidity, it's unmistakable. To you, maybe, but I lost sight of it somewhere along the way." I closed the oldest sketchbook, running my fingers over its worn cover. I let him rename my voice until I couldn't recognize it as my own anymore. "But you hear it now," Vera said softly. I nodded, something like certainty settling in my chest. "And I do. And I know what I want to do with Eternal Vows." The next morning dawned clear and bright, Portland's skyline etched against a flawless blue sky, the kind of day photographers and brides pray for, when everything seems possible and fresh beginnings feel inevitable. It felt like an omen, though whether good or bad remained to be seen. My mother arrived at 9, as promised, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of both authority and solidarity. Her transformation from uncertain ally to fierce advocate had been one of the few bright spots in this ordeal. "You're sure about this?" she asked as we prepared to leave for Marcus's office. "As sure as I can be, given the circumstances." I smoothed the front of my own suit, charcoal gray, structured but with subtle feminine details that were distinctly my design aesthetic. "It's the right thing to do, not just for me, but for everyone involved." She nodded, a mixture of pride and worry in her eyes. "Then let's go." Marcus's office occupied the top floor of a sleek building in downtown Portland, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city and the distant mountains beyond. Today, those windows provided a backdrop for a confrontation years in the making. Bennett arrived exactly on time, immaculate as always, in a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His expression was a carefully constructed mask of professional concern, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the calculation behind his eyes as he assessed the room. Marcus at the head of the conference table, flanked by 2 associates, my mother to my right, Vera slightly behind me, and most surprisingly, Fiona, seated quietly in the corner, her hands folded protectively over her belly. His gaze lingered on her, a flash of confusion quickly replaced by confident dismissal. He still believed she was his ally, his unwitting pawn in this chess game of reputation and legacy. "Elena," he said, his voice as smooth as expensive whiskey. "I was hoping we could resolve this privately. That opportunity passed when you tried to erase me from my own life," I replied, keeping my tone neutral despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. He sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. "I understand you're upset about the personal situation, but dragging business matters into our private difficulties is entirely appropriate," Marcus interrupted, "given that Mr. Blackwood has systematically conflated the two for years. Bennett's attorney, a razor-thin woman with a reputation for ruthless efficiency, placed a restraining hand on his arm. Perhaps we should focus on why we're here today." "An excellent suggestion," Marcus agreed. He slid a document across the table. "This is our settlement proposal." Bennett made no move to take it. "I'm not interested in settlements. Eternal Vows is my company, built on my designs, my vision. Elena's contributions, while appreciated, were supplementary at best." I might have flinched at those words once, might have doubted myself in the face of his unwavering confidence, but not anymore. Not with the evidence we had, not with my voice finally clear in my own ears. That's not what your own records show, Bennett, I said quietly. His eyes narrowed. What records? Marcus opened a folder and began laying out printed emails, design files with metadata timestamps, financial transactions, a paper trail of betrayal and theft that could not be explained away. These records, Marcus said, along with testimony from multiple former employees, including your assistant Darcy, detailed documentation of the original design process for Elena's wedding dress, and he paused for effect. A rather illuminating recording of you discussing your plans to frame Ms. Blackwood for financial improprieties that you yourself committed. The color drained from Bennett's face as he recognized Fiona's flash drive contents spread before him. He turned to her, disbelief warring with fury in his expression. You did this? Fiona met his gaze steadily, one hand still protective over her unborn child. I did what I should have done months ago, told the truth. Bennett's attorney leaned forward, scanning the documents with growing alarm. We'll need time to review these materials. Of course, Marcus agreed smoothly. But you should know that copies have already been provided to the district attorney's office, the Fashion Industry Ethics Board, and Mode Magazine's investigative team. Time, he added with pointed emphasis, is a luxury Mr. Blackwood no longer has. Bennett's mask of confidence finally cracked, revealing the desperate man beneath. This is absurd. You're trying to destroy everything I've built because of a personal grievance. The company, the brand, they'll collapse without me. That's where you're wrong, I said, pushing the settlement document toward him again. Eternal Vows doesn't need to collapse. It just needs to be rebuilt on truth instead of lies. His attorney picked up the document, scanning its contents with professional detachment. Her eyebrows rose fractionally, the only indication of surprise at what she was reading. This is unexpected, she murmured. What? Bennett demanded, reaching for the papers. What is she offering? As he read, his expression morphed from anger to confusion to disbelief. This can't be serious. It's entirely serious, I confirmed. In exchange for your immediate resignation and full acknowledgement of my design contributions, I'm willing to preserve the Eternal Vows brand. The company will restructure under new leadership, specifically, a design collective that includes the talented team you've assembled, with proper credit and compensation for all contributors. You'd let the company survive? Bennett's voice held genuine bewilderment, as if mercy were a concept he couldn't quite grasp. The company isn't the problem, Bennett. It never was. The problem was the lie at its foundation. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. Eternal Vows employs over 50 people. Designers, seamstresses, marketing specialists, sales teams. People who believed in what they were creating, even if they didn't know the full truth about where it came from. They don't deserve to lose their livelihoods because of your actions. And what about me? He asked, an edge of desperation creeping into his voice. You expect me to just walk away from everything I've built? Everything we built, I corrected gently. And yes, that's exactly what I expect. It's that. Or face criminal charges for fraud, along with civil penalties that would bankrupt you 10 times over. His attorney placed a warning hand on his arm. Bennett, I strongly advise you to consider this offer. The evidence they've presented is substantial. For a long moment, the conference room was silent except for the subtle sounds of Portland traffic 40 floors below. I watched Bennett's face as he calculated options, weighed scenarios, searched for an escape route that didn't exist. It was the expression of a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse around him, a man finally facing the consequences of years of deception. And if I refuse? He asked finally. Marcus smiled thinly. Then Ms. Blackwood will pursue full legal remedies, both civil and criminal. The evidence will become public record. And based on my assessment of the district attorney's interest in this case, you'll have plenty of time in a federal facility to consider the wisdom of your choice. Bennett turned to Fiona, a last desperate appeal in his eyes. The baby, our child. You'd let his father go to prison? Fiona's expression remained resolute, though I could see the cost of that resolve in the tension around her mouth. Our child deserves a father who values truth and integrity. Someone he can look up to, not someone who builds success on lies and theft. Something in Bennett seemed to collapse then, not dramatically, but in the subtle way of a man who suddenly recognizes the game is truly over. He looked down at the settlement document again, then at his attorney, who gave a small, confirming nod. "Fine," he said flatly. "I'll sign." The mechanics of dismantling a lie and rebuilding truth in its place are surprisingly complex. Over the next hours, lawyers drafted and redrafted language, specific acknowledgments were negotiated, financial arrangements were structured. Bennett signed document after document, each one stripping away another layer of his carefully constructed facade. By late afternoon, it was done. Bennett Blackwood was no longer the head of Eternal Vows. The company would restructure under a new leadership model, with proper credit for all designs, past, present, and future. A press release would go out acknowledging my foundational role in the company's aesthetic, and most importantly, the truth would finally be known. As Bennett prepared to leave, defeated but not in handcuffs, he paused beside my chair. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "Destroying everything we had together?" I looked up at him. This man I had loved, had believed in, had built dreams with. "You destroyed what we had the moment you decided your ambition was more important than our partnership. All I did was refuse to be erased." He had no response to that. With a final nod to his attorney, he left the conference room, shoulders bent under the weight of consequences long overdue. In the silence that followed his departure, I felt a curious emptiness, not sadness or regret, but the peculiar vacuum that follows the removal of something toxic that you've carried so long you've forgotten what it feels like to be without it. "Are you okay?" Vera asked softly. I considered the question carefully. "I think I will be. Eventually." My mother squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing. The compassionate thing, even when he deserved neither right nor compassion." "It wasn't for him," I said. "It was for all the people who believed in what they were creating." And I glanced at Fiona, who sat quietly with her own thoughts. For the future. Later, as afternoon faded into evening, Fiona and I found ourselves alone in Marcus's office. The lawyers departed to file paperwork, my mother and Vera gone to arrange dinner. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken words, with pain and betrayal, and the tentative possibility of, not forgiveness perhaps, but understanding. "What happens now?" Fiona asked, echoing her question from our museum meeting, but this time with a different weight behind it. I moved to the window, looking out at Portland as lights began to twinkle on in buildings and streets. "Now we move forward. Separately, but not as enemies." "I never wanted to be your enemy, Elena." Her voice was small, stripped of the confidence that had always been her armor, even when I was behaving like one. I turned to face her, really seeing her, not just my sister the betrayer, or my sister the expectant mother, but Fiona in her entirety. Complex, flawed, capable of both terrible hurt and genuine remorse. "I know," I said finally. "That's why I couldn't let Bennett destroy you along with me. Why I made sure the settlement protected your financial future, and the baby's." Surprise flickered across her face. "You did that? After everything?" "Family is complicated," I said simply, "but that child is innocent. And despite everything, you're still my sister." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't deserve your consideration." "Probably not," I agreed. "But healing isn't about what we deserve. It's about what we choose." She nodded, wiping at her tears. "I want to make better choices, Elena. For myself, for the baby. I want to find my own voice instead of always trying to borrow someone else's." "Then start by being honest, with yourself first, then with everyone else." I moved back to the table, gathering my papers. The truth isn't always comfortable, but it's the only foundation worth building on. As we prepared to leave, Fiona paused at the door. "The dress. Your wedding dress. I'm sorry I wore it. Sorry I let him convince me it was acceptable to take something so personal, so uniquely yours." The mention of the dress sent a pang through me. Not as sharp as it once would have been, but still tender. "What will you do with it now?" Return it to you if you want it. Or, she hesitated, we could donate it. To a museum, perhaps, as the first piece in an exhibit about your design work. A way to reclaim its story and give it new meaning. The suggestion caught me off guard, not just for its thoughtfulness, but for the implicit recognition of my artistic legacy. I'll consider it, I said. And I meant it. 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning, I stood in the gallery of the Portland Design Museum, surrounded by my work. Sketches, prototypes, finished pieces, a retrospective of my design career, including the wedding dress that had started everything. Not displayed on a traditional mannequin, but suspended in midair, illuminated to highlight the intricate details that had been uniquely mine. The exhibition, titled Reclaimed Voice, The Design Journey of Elena Blackwood, had opened to critical acclaim and unexpected public interest. Fashion students crowded the gallery daily, studying the evolution of my aesthetic, the distinct visual language that Bennett had once claimed as his own. Eternal Vows still existed, but transformed, now a design collective where credit was given where due, where collaboration was genuine rather than exploitative. I served as creative consultant, but had declined a management role, preferring to focus on my own emerging label, Authentic Threads, which specialized in evening wear rather than bridal designs. Bennett had relocated to Europe, from what I heard, trying to rebuild some semblance of a career far from the scandal that had tarnished his name in American fashion circles. Fiona had given birth to a healthy boy named James, after our grandfather. We were not close, my sister and I, but we were civil, connected by the complex bonds of family, and shared history that neither betrayal nor forgiveness could fully sever. As for me, I was healing, creating, finding joy in design again, in the pure expression of my artistic voice without fear of theft or erasure. The journey had been painful, the cost high. But standing in that gallery, surrounded by the tangible evidence of my creativity finally recognized and celebrated, I knew that every step had been necessary. Quite a turnout, said a familiar voice beside me. I turned to find Tessa Romano, Mode's formidable editor-in-chief, surveying the crowded gallery with approval. The fashion world loves a redemption story, she observed, especially one with such compelling visual evidence. Is that what this is? I asked. Redemption? That, and justice. Both rare commodities in our industry. She gestured toward a group of young design students clustered around one of my earliest sketches. But perhaps the most important aspect is the example you've set. Those students will enter the industry knowing the value of their creative voice, the importance of protecting it. I watched the students, their earnest excitement, their passionate discussions of technique and inspiration. I hope so. I hope they never lose sight of their unique perspective the way I almost did. Almost, Tessa emphasized. But in the end, you reclaimed it. That's what matters. As she moved away to greet another gallery patron, I found myself drawn back to the wedding dress. My wedding dress, suspended like a ghost of what might have been. But unlike before, its presence no longer brought pain. Instead, I felt a curious sense of closure, of chapters ending and beginning simultaneously. A young design student approached hesitantly, sketchbook clutched to her chest. Ms. Laurent, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your work has been so inspiring to me, especially knowing what you went through to have it recognized. I smiled, genuinely touched. What's your name? Zoe? I'm studying at PNCA. She held out her sketchbook. Would you mind looking at some of my designs? I'm trying to find my voice, but sometimes it's hard to know if what I'm hearing is really me. I took the book, recognizing in her uncertain expression my own younger self, talented but vulnerable to doubt, to the voices that would say, not good enough, or not truly yours. Finding your voice is a lifelong journey, Zoe, I said, opening to the first page. But the most important thing is to listen for it, even when others try to drown it out or claim it as their own. As I looked through her sketches, raw but promising, with flashes of genuine originality, I felt something settle within me. The past couldn't be changed. The betrayals couldn't be undone. But here, in this moment of connection with a young artist just beginning her journey, I found a purpose in my pain, a meaning in what I had endured. By refusing to be erased, by fighting to reclaim my voice and my story, I had perhaps made it easier for others to protect theirs. And in the end, that was a legacy worth all the struggle. Not just designs on display or a name on a label, but the courage to stand in one's truth, even when the world conspires to rewrite it. Later, as I walked along the Willamette River, Portland's lights reflecting in its dark surface, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the betrayal that had nearly broken me, the strength I hadn't known I possessed until tested, the voice I had reclaimed, note by painful note. I hadn't just survived erasure. I had emerged from it more authentically myself than I had ever been before. My sister had worn my wedding dress to her baby shower, and my husband had made his move to replace me entirely. But in doing so, they had inadvertently set me free, free from illusions, free from a life built on carefully constructed lies, free to create a future truly my own. Sometimes, I realized, the most beautiful designs emerge not from perfect materials, but from what remains after everything inessential has been cut away. What matters isn't the attempt to erase you, but your refusal to disappear, your insistence on writing yourself back into the story, one true word at a time. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice? Tell me in the comments below. I read everyone. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.